This is
City News.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City News at 4. I'm Pablo Edward.
And I'm Aurore Charon. Coming up on today's show, how do students feel about the rise in tuition fees?
Because I'm actually just a girl trying to get a degree, make my family proud, make my girls proud.
Do trans people feel safe on the London Underground?
I've been spat on, someone's grabbed my wig, someone's pushed me to the side.
And is that Harry Styles singing?
Watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high.
But first the headlines with Gwendolyn Baring.
The Archbishop of Canterbury has resigned over the fallout from a child sex abuse scandal that the Church of England's accused of covering up. Justin Welby's stepped down after a report last week suggested serial abuser John Smith may have been brought to justice if concerns had been flagged earlier. The barrister died in South Africa in 2018. Graham Nichols, the director of a network of Christian churches, says some people feel failed by the Anglican community.
The main emphasis here has to be use, and are they being taken care of as best they can? The church acknowledging the wrong that was done in a fulsome way and seeking to care for them. That's the big priority.
The Prime Minister claims there is no national security without climate security as the UK pledges to a more than 80% cut to carbon emissions by 2035. Sir Keir Starmer made the commitment at the COP29 summit in Baku. The PM insists the government won't tell people how to live their lives when it comes to meeting his ambitious targets. The target's been welcomed by climate campaigners who are calling for clear plans to deliver it.
There are two paths ahead. One, the path of inaction and delay, or second, the path we walk to the challenges of today, but also fixed firmly on the opportunities for tomorrow.
A man's been arrested after reports of a person carrying knives outside the Houses of Parliament. The 34-year-old man is held on suspicion of possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. No injuries have been reported. It's understood former Downing Street Chief of Staff Sue Gray has rejected an offer of a role as envoy for nations and regions. She left as Sir Keir Starmer's top aide less than 100 days into a new Labour government. At the time, it was announced she'd take a new job to support the PM in delivering his devolution agenda, but it's now reported she's decided not to do this.
News local to you. This is City.
Our top story. The Archbishop of Canterbury has resigned after a report from the Church of England covered up sexual abuse by a barrister. It's claimed John Smith QC may have been brought to justice sooner had Justin Welby formally reported it a decade ago. Tom Davis is live at Lambeth Palace.
Thanks, Aurore. In a statement around 2 hours ago, Archbishop Welby announced his resignation after seeking permission from the King. His decision to resign comes after days of mounting criticism over his handling of reports of prolific child abuse by John Smythe, a British barrister and former chairman of a Christian charity who died in 2018. A review published last week revealed that Welby failed to formally report Smythe's abuse to authorities in 2013, the year that he became Archbishop of Canterbury. In his statement today, Welby said that when he was informed in 2013 and told that police had been notified, he believed wrongly that an appropriate resolution would follow. In light of the review, victims of Smythe's abuse had called for Welby to resign in recent days, and their voices had been added to by a growing number of key figures within the church. Welby ultimately said that he took personal and institutional responsibility for what he called a long and re-traumatizing period from 2013 to 2024. He went on to express his sorrow for the victims and survivors of abuse and said that the last few days had renewed his long felt and profound sense of shame at historic safeguarding failures in the church. Reacting to the resignation this afternoon, the Archbishop of York, who is the second most senior official in the Church of England, called Welby's resignation the right and honourable thing to do.
Tom Davis at Lambeth Palace there. Academic experts say a rise in university tuition fees is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. But the government says a 3% increase will help secure the future of higher education amid financial challenges. Nada Guam reports.
From April, undergraduate students in England will have to pay £250 a year more for their degree. The maximum price cap for full-time students will be going up for the first time in 7 years to £9,535. The average student leaves uni with £50,000 of debt, a figure that will be set to rise. These people weren't too impressed.
I just want to get a good education, live a good life, and I want to actually do well. I don't want to struggle, but then you guys are taking away my degree, which is so unfair because I'm actually just a girl trying to get a degree, make my family proud, make my girls proud.
I'd rather want to just learn the skills than just grab a degree and that's it. I'd rather make a portfolio that would show to my employer instead of just having a degree that would just say that doesn't really show what you've done.
Another lie from this Labour government. They said they wasn't going to do it. Yeah, they've just lied on everything in their manifesto. We never voted for this.
Data from education charity Sutton Trust suggests students from lower income backgrounds prefer to avoid debt. And Alex Stanley from the National Union of Students is worried higher fees will exclude them.
At some point, prospective students and their parents are going to come to the conclusion that university just isn't worth it anymore. And I do not think that everybody necessarily needs to go to university. I think that's a choice that individuals should make, but it's one that they should make based on personal preference, based on career aspirations, based on what they want to do with their life, not based on whether they can afford it or not. As soon as you do that, you have a two-tier education system.
Now, when tuition fees were introduced, the idea was the cost would be shared 50-50 between the government and the student. But at the moment, according to the NUS, students are paying more than 80% of it. Data Higher Education helps universities use data to make them more efficient. Jason Streets from the company says unis could get more money from existing funding routes.
That means international, essentially that means postgraduate. For many universities, essentially the intersection of these two has been the most appealing solution, if you like, to fund even UK undergraduates.
But business model expert Professor Charles Baden-Fuller says it's not just about bumping up fees for international students. He thinks innovation is just as key.
And foreign students help fund the UK system. Our real strength is the fact that the UK is an interesting place to come and learn. It's a multiracial, multicultural, vibrant society, and much of the education package is coming here to learn something, not just from the classroom, but from being in the streets, being in the bars. Yes, the government needs to pay more. We need to raise the fees and make students pay a little bit more. But universities have to also be more innovative and more creative and find other ways to complement this to actually provide a more exciting program and a more enduring package for both students and research.
The government says tough decisions are needed to safeguard English universities. Ministers insist they won't stand by and watch them fail, but only time will tell.
This is
City News.
A London drag queen tells City News she feels unsafe travelling around the capital when she's in costume. Figures show there's been a rise in LGBTQ+ hate crimes on public transport. In response, TFL says extra patrols are being carried out. Lina Adams has more.
I've been spat on, someone's grabbed my wig, someone's pushed me to the side.
Mahatma Gandhi says she's been the victim of a transphobic hate crime several times on London's transport network. Statistics from Transport for London show that last year, 2,974 incidents of all types of hate crime were reported. That's up from 2,217 the previous year. Those numbers don't include Mahatma though. She didn't report it.
There's been situations where, it's time, effort, money, life, but sometimes it's just kind of I don't want to deal with that. I just want to go on with my life.
TfL says it has deployed specialist teams to patrol the network to crack down on incidents. Charlie, not their real name, says they don't feel that that's the answer.
I feel like I would feel more uncomfortable, mainly just because I don't really trust the police massively. I feel like they had a team that was more of a community support team or stuff like that. I would feel more comfortable if it was something like that, which was more focused on the well-being of the people.
Mahatma also shared her thoughts, stressing the importance of education in the training of authorities.
I will be diplomatic and say that there has been a disconnect in the way that authority has dealt with this situation. People are given the knowledge and given the opportunity to learn about us, about our community, about the trans history, that we have gone through, then you can protect us. I want you to know and understand the reasons why we have issues we have to combat.
TFL also says it's hosting free online active bystander awareness training to encourage Londoners to speak up and take action. With Transgender Awareness Week beginning tomorrow, British Transport Police say they're here and ready to help.
And we are joined in the studio now by Lynne Adams. Welcome. In light of your report, what else have you found?
Thank you, Aurora. So a recent research report by the charity Gallup identifies specific barriers that either discourage or prevent LGBTQ+ victims from reporting instances of hate crime. And this is because of the trivialisation of the abuse they have faced, and commonly the belief that nothing will come out of it. There's also concern about the consequences of reporting and the escalation of violence. And crucially for trans and non-binary people, their identity is often inaccurately recorded.
And how do people report these crimes?
So if you go to the Transport for London website and you scroll down to report a crime or incident, this has more details on how to report a hate crime specifically.
Thank you, Lynne. And don't forget, you can find more on our website at citylondon.co.uk.
City News has been told it's not just money that's needed to sort out London's homelessness problem. Charities say there's a lack of care, after figures show the number of rough sleepers in London is the highest it's been in 10 years. The government says it's announced more than £200 million of extra funding to prevent homelessness in the first place. Kiva Cusson reports.
Homelessness in London has now hit record levels with more than 11,000 rough sleepers, according to the Greater London Authority. New government proposals aim to tackle the crisis, but local charities question whether this will continue to provide short-term fixes for long-term issues. Hugo Sugg, CEO of Carden Banfield Foundation, speaks from his own personal experience.
Homelessness as an issue cannot ever be ended. So some people become homeless as a result of mental health. So they have mental health crisis, they have mental health issues, and that can lead them to, for example, losing their job or a relationship breakdown. And that is the primary issue was mental health, and the secondary effect of that is homelessness. My mental health became a lot worse after I got housed than when I was sleeping rough. I think it was the adrenaline of trying to find somewhere to live every day, trying to find somewhere to stay.
Michael Angus, Managing Director at Barons Court Project, feels it's time we wake up and look at the deeper problems behind the issue.
So there's lots of reasons why people end up homeless, but the main one still, and it has been in 30 years of me working in the sector, is relationship breakdown. What causes that relationship breakdown could be a whole mix of different things. The difficulty, I think that probably the general public doesn't understand, is that all the systems that are designed to try and move people through very often don't work for actually what's needed. If you think of someone who's been on the streets for a long time and then is suddenly placed in a hostel where there are rules about visitors and whether you can keep your dog and curfews and this and that and the other and having to pay rent, people find that very difficult to work with or very difficult to manage.
Mr. Angus says it's debatable whether the future of the issue will look better or not.
Most people don't realise that if you go and live in a homeless hostel run by some of the larger charities, your rent is likely to be around £425 a week, not a month, a week. The housing benefit will cover it, but you can't then get jobs that will pay, or most people can't get jobs that would afford them to pay £1,700 a month in rent.
This is City News, and the time is 4:14. Football bosses in Middlesex say they're taking steps so their leagues are inclusive to everybody. It's after a Muslim player wearing tracksuit bottoms was told she could only play for her team United Dragons if she wore shorts. Dorothy Amo has the latest.
Quite upset, very angry, because if that person happened to me, because what has trousers got to do with the way I play?
This is what players of City St. George's University Women's Football Club had to say about recent events affecting Muslim football player Ikra Ismail. Ikra is a Somali football player in the Greater London Women's Football League. she was banned from playing a match as she refused to wear shorts over joggers, a choice linked to her religious beliefs.
That's old, bro! For every match, I always wear my trousers as well, sportswear. And if I was told not to wear that and wear shorts instead, I would feel quite angry.
Shala, coach of the City St. George's Women Football Club, is a strong advocate for inclusivity in women's sports.
As a coach, I have a responsibility to make everyone feel like they're part of a team. Coming from a Muslim household myself, it does make me feel a type of way as well, because I feel like everyone should feel included in football.
Lucy! Well done, Lucy. Ref, that's a foul, man.
The Middlesex FA referee revealed that the league had instructed him not to allow players to wear clothing items not coherent to the football kit. The FA got in contact with all county FAs and match officials to make sure that all women and girls can take part in football games wearing attire that ensures their faith or religious beliefs are not compromised. They are still committed in making English football an inclusive and welcoming environment for everybody.
Happened to a teammate that I know that had been working hard throughout the season and had done nothing. To have something as small as this become such a huge deal is inappropriate.
When I play football, I feel safe and I'm allowed to wear whatever I want to wear because of my modesty and because of my religion. Everyone should be able to play football the way they want.
1, 2, 3, City!
Keep up to date with all the news that matters to you on City Radio.
City News has been told public trust in the royal family is slowly eroding, and investigations found parts of the royal estate are being rented out to the NHS, armed forces and schools, potentially earning the family millions of pounds. Both the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall say they operate as commercial companies. Lola Boddington-Rees reports.
They give stability to the country.
I honestly have no opinion on them.
I do, but I think it's diminishing slightly.
Because I think they bring a lot of money into the country.
It's nice to have that consistency in the background, and that's what the royal family provide.
The National Centre for Social Research reported earlier in the year that support for the monarchy is at an all-time low. Will the Duchy Files investigation by Channel 4 and the Sunday Times change public opinion?
The overwhelming one-sided shock, there was very little criticism, to the investigation apart from GB News.
Stephen Granderson is the producer-director of the Dispatches documentary, The King, the Prince and Their Secret Millions. He believes that there was not enough media coverage of the story.
Point is, all of the royal correspondents who had the opportunity, they had the microphone in front of the royals all the last couple of weeks, and nobody bothered asking them a question about this.
The CEO of anti-monarchy pressure group Republic, Graham Smith, agrees.
Royal correspondents' reaction is appalling, but also not a surprise. If they go too hard on those sorts of stories, then that will limit their access, which is also an indictment on the royals that they control access to the media in that way.
GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker explains the royal coverage.
There has been some criticism that perhaps us in the royal rota should have perhaps talked about it more. I think the other side of the argument to that is that we will write what the public want to hear. It's not our role to dictate to the public what they should and shouldn't care about.
Graham Smith thinks royal reporting has changed since the Queen's death.
For most people it was brand new, and for most people this is appalling. And again, I think that they wouldn't have done that when the Queen was alive, because she was the Duke of Lancaster. And I think that if you'd done that when she was alive, saying the Queen is doing this, it would have had a very different response to the Charles is doing.
Cameron Walker suggests politicians need to put the question of the monarchy on the political agenda.
I think until public opinion shifts to such a degree where politicians start to take notice and then form their manifestos or policy around it, I don't think there's going to be any noticeable shift.
Meanwhile, Graham Smith believes these revelations will help to change the public perception of the monarchy.
Media, well, there is social media that didn't exist 20 years ago. So I think these things will just add to the pile that is building up of objections to the monarchy that will just keep on circulating in that.
This is
City News.
Transport for London have announced plans to try to make sure we're no more than 20 minutes from a toilet on public transport. Let's get more on that now, and the other stories are on citylondonnews.co.uk with Naomi George. Naomi, tell us more.
That's right. Well, if we remember back in January, Sadiq Khan pledged to invest 25 million into toilets over the next 5 years. But this week they've released details of their plans. TfL say that 68% of London stations do have a toilet, but in reality many of these are inaccessible for those with mobility issues and they're often locked by station staff. TfL and Sadiq Khan said that the construction will begin before the end of the year to start putting toilets in some of the stations where they're not present, and 7 stations have been shortlisted for priority refurbishment. These include Morden Underground, South Tottenham Overground and Hammersmith Underground.
Interesting. What other stories are on the website today?
Well, following last week's US election result, anti-Donald Trump protesters have been outside the US Embassy in Nine Elms. The London Assembly has been meeting to discuss finding the right balance between people's right to protest and preserving public safety. And one more thing before I go.
Watermelon sugar high. Watermelon sugar high.
Naomi, I know that's a Harry Styles song, but that wasn't Harry Styles, was it?
Spot on, but perhaps as close as you might get, Aurora. Our reporter Joe Horton was at the centre of a Harry Styles lookalike contest in Soho Square this Saturday. You have to check out his footage on Instagram later. I heard it was quite the show. He found himself with several hundred others stopping to watch the dozen contestants work their magic, and he actually managed to speak to a couple of the competitors as they waited to hear whether they had won a prize.
I've never done anything like this. Never had this much media attention in my life for anything. It's been really, really good fun.
It's a strange atmosphere to turn up in a field and suddenly people are quite excited that you're there for nothing that you've done yourself. It's ideal.
But that's all from me.
Thank you, Naomi. Good news for Londoners, everyone's favourite marmalade-loving bear is back on the big screen. And Paddington in Perus had the biggest opening weekend for a British film in the UK since 2020 James Bond No Time to Die. But did you also know, Pablo, that the famous bear was not originally meant to be Peruvian?
Oh, really?
Yeah, the original author Michael Bond wanted him to be from Africa, but his editor had to remind him that bears were extinct from the continent.
Well, it's a good thing they remained authentic in the realistic tale about a talking bear.
Exactly, vital stuff. For more, Johnny Charlton's been following London's favourite all-sign hero in his next adventure.
Dear Aunt Lucy, I have very important news. We're coming to Peru.
Oh, that's right. London's iconic bear Paddington is back on cinema screens, and the opening weekend of Paddington in Peru has delivered a massive £9.6 million at the box office. Not necessarily a surprise with the standards set by the first 2 instalments.
Paddington 2 is my favourite film of all time and is the best / most rated film on Rotten Tomatoes.
Seeing Paddington overcome so many different obstacles and still maintaining a very positive idea of London.
Fans will also have been drawn in by new cast members Antonio Banderas,
Capitan Hunter Cabot, at your service.
And Olivia Colman.
I'm afraid she set off on some sort of quest.
And as part of the official celebrations, Great Western Railway has even launched a Paddington Express train running through Devon and Cornwall.
It just goes to show and reinforce that special place that that bear has in people's hearts. Just the reaction that it's had from our customers and from people, not just in this country, from around the world.
However, reviews have been mixed so far, with some feeling it hasn't quite recaptured the charm of the earlier movies.
I think it still had like a similar vibe to the first 2, maybe not as well executed.
With others also disappointed by the absence of Sally Hawkins, who played Mrs. Brown in the previous films.
I didn't like how they changed the actress of the mum at all.
That was not good.
Perhaps not reaching the heights of the first 2 films, Paddington's popularity still doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
According to legend, the bear will show the way. Right. And what bear would that be?
News local to you. This is City.
City News has been told a new variation of rugby will make the sport easier to offer in inner London schools with limited facilities. The Rugby Football Union's rolling out T1 across 5,000 schools across England over the next 5 years. A report found, however, that the sport is approaching crisis point in schools, with a big drop in the number of students taking part in it. Harry Atkins reports.
The sound of a packed-out Twickenham in full voice. However, a recent report commissioned by the RFU into the future rugby in schools in England found that the sport is facing a crisis point. It highlighted injury risks associated with rugby and the need for the sport to grow its social reach and ethnic diversity. I went down to Twickenham on Saturday to hear fans' concerns.
Well, I think there's definitely a crisis. I mean, certainly at kind of Colts level, we see a huge drop-off of kids carrying on. Parents are worried about head injuries.
There's only like 2 people that I know in the other class and my class that play rugby.
Parents going, actually, do I want my son and daughter playing that, getting their head injured?
A lot of the schools in the area dropping rugby because of the element of being sued by parents.
Planet Rugby writer Alex Spink added his thoughts on the issues facing rugby.
The perception is amongst an awful lot of people, particularly parents of young kids, is that rugby is a dangerous sport. And unless it can do more to convince them otherwise, then I think it does have an existential problem.
Schools rugby charity leader Tara McDougall raised further concerns about the lack of rugby in schools.
Lots of the schools don't run rugby in their curriculum, i.e. 1, they don't have the space, or 2, they don't have the expertise within the PE staff.
The RFU believes that the introduction of T1, a new non-contact form of the game, will help to tackle some of these concerns. It is being introduced into 5,000 schools in the next 4 years, and Steve Granger, the RFU's Executive Director of Development, told City News why he's hopeful that the programme can reinvigorate rugby in schools.
This has been developed by teachers for teachers, and that's really, really important. You know, it's not a technical game. So actually T1 has to be able to be played on a piece of concrete, a piece of tarmac, a small astro area. And I think, again, that's the design principle. We're not going to get loads of grass pitches put down in secondary schools, but you can look at what they've got and you can create something that at least gets oval balls into people's hands.
Tara McDougall, schools rugby charity leader, has hope for the impact of this new format.
If the RFU looks at T1 as a vehicle to introduce rugby to state schools, and that's packaged properly, then that's a really good opportunity to get in people involved in a game that they may have never played, which is a really good start.
However, Owen Slott, the chief sports writer at the Times, believes it may actually do more harm than good.
If you're a school and you're saying this is our big traditional rugby and here's our T1 rugby, then immediately you're lodging that question in the parents' head is like, is that's the safer one? So we're going to go for T1, the safer one, which means that you're going to be knocking out some people from the traditional rugby.
The RFU, though, maintain that they are positive about the future of rugby, and they believe that the implementation of a new national network of school rugby managers will help the rollout of T1. Harry Atkins, City News.
This is City Radio.
And with more sport, here are the latest headlines from Gwendolyn Baring.
Referee David Coote's alleged comments about former Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp are being investigated by the Football Association. A video online appears to show highly derogatory remarks about the German and the Premier League club. Governing body, the Professional Game Match Officials Limited, announced that Coote has been suspended. As Premier League football faces international break, fans are debating Arsenal's current title chances. Following their 1-1 draw against Chelsea on Sunday, they sit in 4th place, 9 points behind leaders Liverpool.
Injuries play the part, clearly. The same as any football club, you lose some key players, then you are going to suffer for that, especially if you've not got strength in depth and experience in depth, which I think we might suffer from that as well.
The players are mostly injured and they're playing because they don't have many subs. So, I mean, it is a bit uneasy, but we can't do anything about it.
Had a few injuries, but they look strong this past weekend at least, so hopefully coming back around.
England cricketers Lauren Bell, Freya Kemp, Maya Boucher and Lindsay Smith will all play for Hampshire next season. They were previously at the Rose Bowl with Southern Vipers and will remain on the South Coast with the newly formed women's team.
Thanks for joining us on City News. For now, it's goodbye from me, Aurore.
And it's goodbye from me, Pablo. Thank you.
News local to you. This
is City. This is
City News.